Sorry, I was mute. I know you answered this question on your book about on critical psychiatry, but I think the suggestions that you give at the end of the book are really interesting for the people. So the question is there any future for psychiatry?
I have written several books about psychiatry. Which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about critical psychiatry textbook.
Ah, okay. Okay, I published this myself this summer in July. I read the 5 most commonly used psychiatric textbooks in Denmark. They are used by medical students, by students of psychology and psychiatry. And I found so many errors in these books that I wrote my own book, which is more honest, where I point out what is wrong with these textbooks. And it's the same all over the world. And then I gave some recommendations in the back. But the most important one is that psychiatry should be abolished. So which other things are you thinking of?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For example, I also have a suggestion that in the meantime, before psychiatry gets abolished, which will never happen, those in charge of psychiatry should not be psychiatrists because it's too dangerous for the patients. It should be psychologists who are not in favor of psychiatric drugs, because some psychologists try to behave like psychiatrists, and this gives them prestige. And so they are positive to psychiatric drugs. But we really need psychiatry to be run by social workers and psychologists that are not positive to psychiatric drugs. This should happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we psychologists, and this is a conflict of interest, a declaration of conflict of interest, because I'm a clinical psychologist. We feel we have to prove we are effective playing other game, like playing with psychiatrist rules. Because we have to fit in all of that biomedical construction of mental illness. And we, at least some of us, are critical with this conception. We don't focus on brain that have to change, but on a person and his behaviors, emotions, and thoughts, and the role of his relationship with his environment. So the question is, what do you think it could be the role of we clinical psychologists, which is what you have talked a bit about, and in this job of changing all of these psychiatric practices, and how we psychologists can do better in this job?
Well, good psychologists are already doing pretty well, because they know the importance of talking to people and listening to them and finding out what happened to them in the past. This is so vital for psychiatric patients to be heard and understood. So I think you're already doing quite well. Before this interview, you wrote to me that there are also problems with psychological research. And this is, of course, true, that some studies of psychotherapy are also biased. For example, because the examiner of the effect is not blinded, but knows whether the patient got psychotherapy or just some kind of usual talk and caring. But even so, it is obvious that psychological therapy can be effective, and it doesn't kill people. which psychiatric drugs do. In my book from 2015, I tried to work out how many people are killed by psychiatric drugs. So I studied the randomized trials, and I studied good observational studies where people with and without drug usage were being compared. And I came up with a devastating result, namely that psychiatric drugs are so harmful that they may be the third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. And I'm fully aware that this estimate might be exaggerated, but I went to the best research I could find. And even though it's not the third leading cause of death, it might be the fourth or the fifth leading cause of death. And this is very, very bad for drugs that don't really help people, but make it more difficult for them to live a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
So there are so many good reasons why we should not use these drugs. Apart from very acute situations where a patient is totally deranged and cannot sleep and has a terrible time, but then we don't need psychosis pills. We can just use benzodiazepines, which are not so dangerous. And they even seem to work better in an acutely disturbed situation.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, these drugs are very cheap. So you will have difficulty finding any psychiatrist or drug industry, not any drug company, that will recommend these drugs instead of psychosis pills.